So I have a GE Profile JTP95 microwave and convection oven, and the problem I'm having is when I turn it on bake, let's say bake 350, it stays at 100, it never goes up. And what I noticed is that the bottom coil, which is the bake coil, never gets hot, and I've read it could be one of three things. The coil's bad, the connection of the electricity to the coil on the back is not connected, or the circuitry on the control panel is bad. And the rest of the circuitry or the control panel works fine. The broil, by the way, works. The top coil, which is the broil coil, seems to come on, but the bake coil on the bottom doesn't. So we're going to take this apart and try to figure out which of the three problems it is. Pretty sure that my control panel is functioning. We can see if we do broil start, we don't get a temperature sensing, but we can feel the top coil, if you just put your hand close, getting warm, whereas the bottom one is not getting warm at all. So we're going to, we took out the grates, and we're going to first have to remove this panel here. Looks like there's 4 screws or bolts on the side, so we're going to remove those first. We're going to use a socket wrench. It looks like it's a 1/4 inch socket wrench, and before we actually do anything, we're going to completely turn off everything. So we're going to turn it off here, and then we're going to go down to the circuit breaker and turn off the circuit breaker also. So I'm down at my circuit breaker, and I found the wall oven here, 31 and 33, which is 31 and 33. This circuit breaker, it looks like it's a 220 line because it's a double circuit breaker. So that now should take out all the power so that we can safely work on the oven. Okay, we're back at our GE Profile oven microwave, and the power is completely out. Nothing's working, and we can now remove these bolts to gain access to that bracket there. So we're simply unscrewing these bolts. They come out real easy. So once you remove the last bolt, this panel just drops down and falls down and exposes the fan, another coil in the back there. So we now have access to things. So there are 2 bolts down here by the lower coil. Looks like we have a coil, which is probably primarily the bake coil on the bottom. That's what we suspect is not working. Looks like we have a coil around the fan, then we have a broil coil up top, which is definitely working. You can still feel that it's warm. So we're going to get these 2 bolts out so that we can remove the bake coil, the bottom coil. Okay, so we removed the 2 bolts there. There are different shaped bolts, so keep them separate from the 4 that you removed to hold the plate on. And we're going to slowly wiggle this to come out. And what you find is that either the wires were disconnected or this heating element is bad. So we have to be a little careful in trying to find those wires as we pull it out. So I believe what we found is that these connectors are very corroded and not making clean contact one of the wires actually came off here, so we're gonna have to try to find that wire and reconnect it. The other one, the connector just popped up as we pulled it out. This is a built-in unit, so it's not really easy to get behind it. So we're gonna have to try to figure out how to get access to those wires. They're inside there. We're just gonna have to fish around, see if we can find them. To find one of the wires, but the other one's back behind there, and we're gonna have to pull the unit out. So the first thing to do is to take off this door, and it's surprisingly easy. With it just ajar like that, you can lift it straight up. So let me show you. So we can simply just lift this straight up while it's ajar just a little bit, and it comes right off. Couldn't be easier than that. Next we're going to remove this bottom trim, and that's done by simply lifting up, pushing up on either end. So if we push up, it snaps off, and then so there's this kind of, and then taking it off, you simply lift it up and it snaps off. So we just took this piece off. Okay, we took these 4 screws out from the 4 positions here, here. I had to pull these down to gain access to that spot there, over here, and up here. And now, just by wiggling it a little, you can see we can start moving the oven out. Slides right out as you wiggle it. We're gonna have to put and build something here to slide the oven onto. So I'm gonna have to try to construct something to slide the oven onto to support it, because we can't just pull it out. It's gonna be pretty heavy. Okay, found some crates and some nice hard wood that lines up really good with the height of the oven, so I should be able to slide it out onto this to access the back of the oven. So here we go. We're just going to pull it out a little bit at a time. Sort of wiggles back and forth. Keeping the wood underneath it. Slowly going to gain access to the back of the oven. Circuit breaker's off. I did that earlier. I'll hold the wood. Pull this. It's starting to drop down a little. It's not dropping down too much. Lift up as we pull out. Just lift up a little bit. Walk it out. And you can start seeing the power cord back there. Looks like it's stretching a little bit. Hopefully we will be able to access it pretty easily. Just wiggling it out again. Looks like we have plenty of slack with the power cord, with the cable. Let me show you behind there, so we can see the wire. Just checking to make sure there's room for that wire to stretch out. It looks like there is. Let's continue to wiggle this out. Make sure the wood stays underneath it, nice and secure. We'll get more playroom with this by removing it completely. Don't know whether we could have done it all. Cut out that we're going to see here in a second. So I'm going to try to turn this as we go now. To access the back, which is what we need access a little bit at a time. And we're starting to access the back. Let me show you. So here's the back of the oven. Probably have some plates we have to take off to gain access to where the there's the hole, but I don't know whether that was going to give me enough room to actually work on the back of the oven. It may have, which would have, I guess I should have checked out first. I was actually thinking of it. Let's continue to wiggle this a little bit. Turn it. We're just turning it now. Let's see how our access is. That's pretty good now. Okay, so I assume we need to take these plates off, and we should then be able to access where the coils connect up. So let's take a peek in here. Looks like we've got two nuts to take off again here. So let me show you. In here, looks like we have two screws there. Okay, so we took off the two screws here from this side of that panel over on this side, and then this thing just swings out and comes off, and it exposes the one wire we were fishing for. And here's the other one with the clip-on. So you can see these wires are a little burnt, especially this one here. And I think that is potentially our problem. We have to connect here so that it connects up over here to the two pieces. So here's the connector that came loose. You can see it's a little burnt, and these two are also not clean. I'm going to sand these down to make better contact with these connectors. So this is the connector that the wire came off of, and we're going to have to mount a new wire onto it. So let it focus. So I separated this, which is the bracket or the crimp that holds the insulation of the wire, and then the wire goes into this section, which is crimped. And turn this around. What we're going to try to do is uncrimp this piece here by prying into this little spot here and seeing if I can uncrimp this and get the wire that's crimped in there out, so we can put in a new wire in. So I was able to flush out. You can see now, you can see through. So able to flush out the old wire and open that crimping a little bit on the small crimps. Again, the crimps on the back over here are to hold the insulation, and the exposed wire should go into the first crimp area. I'm going to use some sandpaper to clean that so that when we crimp it, there's a good contact with the metal. So I'm able to get some sandpaper in there. This is a metal sandpaper, and you can see I can scratch the metal to get it cleaner, to make better contact with the wire. It's all about clean contact with the wire, with the metal. So just rubbing it on all sides that I can get, and hopefully make that real shiny in there to get good contact. I'm also going to sand inside this section here, because that's going to go into the heating coil connector. That's where it connects up to the heating coil. So we're just going to sand in there a little bit. Make sure we get good contact with the connector here. This is the heating coil, and it's going to go on to that connector. We're going to sand these down too, get these nice and shiny. So we're going to sand these now. So you get good contact. You can see they're pretty dirty. I'll do one first. Or corroded from contact. So you can see it's coming clean compared to the other one. Using a metal sandpaper, which is a very fine sandpaper meant for metal. Let's see how much cleaner that is now. Both sides. Okay, I sanded the connectors a whole bunch, so they're a lot cleaner on both sides. So we should get good contact now. Now we have to mount this other connector. Okay, so we cut the red wire here to get rid of the burnt area. And then we simply slipped the wire into the bracket, into the connector. And we're going to want to crimp the end section, crimp both of these. This first crimp here crimps the insulation to hold the wire in place, and then the second little crimp here makes the contact with the exposed wire. Okay, so we now have our wires and our crimps on nice and tight. And I pushed back the coil, and from the back here you can see the connectors are exposed pretty nicely, and I had to be very careful trying to make them a little tighter by crimping them very easily. I crimped one a little too much, and I had to use a screwdriver to uncrimp it, and I was able to get it just the right amount of resistance to have a pretty good contact there. So we should now have, I'm going to put that plate back on and give this a test, see if our coil heats up in bake mode. So we got this plate back on. We inserted these two tabs, and then there were two bolts here, or screws, to secure it. So the heating element is secured with two screws there. I just put one in. I'm going to put the other one in now. So I turned on the power, put it on bake, and the coil heated up. So it wasn't heating up on bake, and now it is. So it was the wire that was just disconnected from the back. So we need to push this back in now. Make sure you have this plate back on tight to protect the wire connectors. And this will just slide back in like we slid it out, and then we'll use the mounting screws to mount it back on. So be careful here. I need to turn it and get it lined up perfectly before we push it back in. So we're going to turn it little by little here. Again, the circuit breaker's off. I tested it. I put the circuit breaker on and test it. Okay, now we can go back in straight. And again, just one side at a time. You can do this all by yourself pretty easily. Just needed to have that shelf at the bottom that was the same height, so when we walked it out, it had something to rest on, nice and square. And looks like our electrical connection should line up just fine. Doesn't seem like it's going to get caught in the back. You have to watch that electric connection to make sure it's not going to get crimped or anything. So just take it nice and easy, go slow, and we'll go back in just right. Just wanted to show you, have to lift up a little bit and push in, and then it goes in a little easier. You just sort of lift up and push in, and I think we're all the way in, which is great. So now we have 4 mounting screws. We're going to have to make sure we're all the way in first for those screws to line up. Lift up a little and push in. And these are the 4 wood screws. So I got a slightly smaller Phillips screwdriver to get these screws in. I don't want to strip the screws. And these brackets have to pull down to be able to access the spot where the screw goes in. Just make sure you're going into the same. So next we need to put this plate back on. It covers the convection fan and the little temperature sensor goes through that hole. I tried to see if I could figure out why, and I took this off. This is a reverse thread nut, and I took that off, and it's not in here. It must be in the motor behind it. So we're not going to fix that today. Must be the motor behind it. It's not terribly annoying. It does let you know the convection oven is running. So we're going to put this plate back on. It goes right in here. And it has 4 mounting screws. So we'll put those in. Next we're going to put the bottom plate back on. And again, it goes in against these little mounting bolts and then down. So we have to line it up, lift it up, and then push down, and it should lock in. So just make sure it goes underneath this plate here. This is a metal plate, which I think should be exposed. This is plastic, so we don't want this plastic to be exposed. I believe that's how it goes to create a nice fit. So you had to put it underneath this plate, then lift it up, and then up, in, and down, and it snaps in pretty tight. Next, to put the door back on, we just pull these hinges out that far, and then the door will slide right on. So the door went on nice and easy. Now it goes up and down, fits, and I put the grills back in, and we're all set to turn on the circuit breaker again to test it out finally. So we turned on the circuit breaker that we had turned off before, and lights are on. Let's close the oven and keep your fingers crossed. We're going to put it on bake 350 and hope that the temperature starts rising. I feel lucky, so hopefully it will work. Come on, Bessie. We can check here to see if it's warming. Definitely warming. Feel some warmth. Maybe it just takes a few minutes to heat up. I'll put it on pause once it starts cranking. Got scared there, it wasn't moving, now it's moving, and the coil's nice and red. It wasn't red at all. And now we are fixed. Another successful fix-it job by Nick's Life. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see some of my other Fix-It videos, they're in the top right here. Here's a shout out to my son's channel, The Nerd Writer. He's got some great videos. And please don't forget to subscribe. Thanks, bye-bye.